Hi everyone, welcome to the Whiteleyverse with me, Connor Whiteley, for another daily short story. Now, before I start today's story, please remember to like, comment and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss any new content, and the engagement really helps the Whiteleyverse with the YouTube algorithm. Also, if you want to buy this short story and any of my other fiction, then they're available from all major ebook retailers and at your local bookstore and local library if you requested, and you can order paperback copies from Amazon. Now, here's today's short story. I hope you enjoyed just as much as I did writing it.
Love over helping. University student ambassador Mark Peter was so excited for today's work, and he hadn't even dared to tell anyone why, not even his best friends in the entire world. He was going to see someone he had been wanting to meet again for ages. He was driving down a rather narrow road in Maidstone, England, that would take him directly to the school he was working at today. He definitely would have preferred the road to be wider, but there were so many little black, blue and white cars parked along it. He wasn't too sure on the different models, but some of the cars looked really nice. He recognized a few BMWs, some Fiats and some other makes, but he had never been great with cars. Mark wasn't going to tell his dad about this little road, because his dad would only tell him to learn more about cars. And Mark really didn't like his dad being right. His ego hardly needed any more inflating. Mark wanted to go faster so he could get to the school sooner, but he just couldn't do it. If he went any faster, he might hit one of the cars or something. The road was just too damn narrow. Mark had to admit there were tons of pretty little semi-detached houses lining the road. Each of the houses were clearly new and only recently moved into. The large windows were perfectly clean, the bright white paint of the houses were fresh and didn't have a hint of dirt on them. The houses were just great all around. It just would have been nice if they had had some driveways, so the road was a little less busy. Mark shook the idea away and smiled to himself, because he liked driving and the road wasn't really that bad. It meant he could continue listening to the radio show he was listening to, only because he couldn't turn the silly radio off. It was currently playing some new hip-hop song that Mark rather liked. His car smelt great with hints of apples, vanilla and dark chocolate because of his somewhat unhealthy breakfast pastry. But he didn't care. The pastry had tasted amazing, and it meant he didn't have to wait in line at a university cafe to get a meal when he didn't want to cook. And it meant he could see Oliver Page even sooner. Mark had been so damn excited when he had been sent an email from Kent University's outreach department about today's activity, and Oliver had been sent the email too. He had only met Oliver a few months ago, but Mark had always wanted to talk to that hot, sexy, insanely fit man again. He had only seen Oliver from a distance, and he was just stunning across a room. Oliver had the most beautiful blonde hair parted to the left, the fittest body, and he just seemed so perfect. Mark had wanted to talk to him badly at that particular outreach event, but he hadn't managed to, which was a massive shame, but he was so glad he was going to have a chance to talk to him now. A whiff of dark chocolate hit Mark's nose, as he braked a little harshly to stop himself kissing another car's wing mirror. He wanted this road to get wider sooner rather than later. Mark had to admit that this work opportunity as a student ambassador was probably the best one to meet Oliver at, because it was called Work-Ready Interviews. Mark hadn't worked one before, but it was based at a local college where he would have to be a mock interviewer for the college students and give them feedback. Mark had always liked working in colleges because they were so relaxed. The students were even easier going than university students, and everything was a lot less formal. Meaning there would hopefully be even more opportunities to talk to cute Oliver. That was the hope, at least. He so badly wanted Oliver to still be as beautiful as he was a few months ago, and he hoped beyond hope that he was into guys and single. And Mark supposed if Oliver had a boyfriend, then he could understand that, and he would have to be okay with it. But he was seriously hoping that wasn't going to be the case. Mark kept driving through the awful little road, and hissed a little as his car got a lot closer to a white Ford Explorer SUV that seemed to pop out of nowhere than he wanted to. After a few more moments, Mark just grinned as the road got wider and he managed to actually drive at the speed limit. He felt like he was driving at 70 miles per hour instead of 30, but it was so much better than going at 5. Mark got even more excited as his stomach filled with butterflies because he was one step closer to the college, and that meant he was one step closer to seeing and meeting Oliver Page for the first time. Little did Mark realize just how much this was going to change his life. Student ambassador Oliver Page leant back in his gray plastic chair that all schools and colleges in England seemed absolutely obsessed with. They must have had some kind of immense bulk discount on the ugly little chairs, but they were somewhat comfortable, if not a little too cold for Oliver's liking. He had arrived a little early to the college, but that was all part of the fun, especially because this was the college he had gone to when he was 16 to 18 years old. And it seemed that nothing had really changed too much. The long corridors were still as wide, loud, and filled with sweaty scents as when he had been here. The teachers were still either smiling and happy to see students or old and grumpy, like they always had been. And the dirty white walls of the corridors were still covered in half-ripped posters, so it was great to see that some stuff never changed. Oliver rather liked the large classroom the school had given outreach for the day. Oliver sat closest to the blue fire door, another bulk discount item for sure in schools and colleges, and he could see everything in the classroom, which wasn't a lot, but it would definitely do. The other ambassadors were all sat round the white table with them, just waiting on one more to turn up. Oliver liked how they all looked like Smurfs in their blue outreach t-shirts, and he couldn't deny some of the guys looked hot as hell. That was definitely a great benefit of the outreach t-shirts. They certainly highlighted how fit a guy was, and he might not have known or worked with any of these ambassadors before, but Oliver had to admit they were hot. There was one guy on the other side of the room with short brown hair, a fit body, and a rather nice ass talking to some girl that really caught Oliver's eye. He seemed confident, passionate, and his smile wasn't too bad. Then he kissed the girl he was talking to, and Oliver just smiled for a moment. He was definitely going to talk to the guy later, like he did with everyone, because outreach work was a great way to meet people, but at least nothing gay could happen, sadly. Oliver really wanted a boyfriend. The outreach staff member, Gil, in her long black dress, beautiful purple scarf and bright pink shoes, had moved all the white tables into little groups of 2, so a student could come into the classroom for their interview. They would be on one side of the table, and then an ambassador would be on the other side looking down at them. That part wasn't in the official briefing, but Oliver wanted to pretend to look down at some students, to give them a taste of real-life interviews. It was actually part the reason why he had signed up to this event. A lot of his friends had said they learnt a lot about interviews by seeing other people do it, and Oliver badly needed the interview help. He just got so nervous, so anxious, and he had even vomited in interviews before. Oliver was hardly surprised outreach work was the only paid work he could get. "Morning, everyone," a little old lady said, as she came in with a trolley of tea, coffee, and orange juice for all of them. Oliver was half tempted to stand up, but then all the other ambassadors got up first and swarmed the little old lady. Oliver laughed as the lady tried to dive out the way, but clearly she had never met university students before. If the others were like him, then his entire diet was made up of sugar, coffee, and whatever fast food he could find. Thankfully, he went to the gym every day, and Oliver really liked the gym. Oliver mainly liked the gym for the cardio, hot guys, and the intense aroma of sweat and manly musk, but he just liked the exercise, really. It was a great way to escape the university grind and just relax. Oliver moved nervously in his seat at the idea of hot guys at the gym. He normally loved it, but considering he had only just split up with his boyfriend, a massive gym bro, a few weeks before, Oliver wasn't sure he wanted to find someone at the gym again so soon. It was why he went as soon as he woke up and just before he went to bed. They were always the quietest hours, and most of the gym bro sort of guys were never there, including his ex. Here's our last one, Gil said. Oliver stood up as the swarm of other university students stepped away from the coffee trolley to let the fire door open again, and a new ambassador stepped into the classroom. Wow! Oliver couldn't help but grin to himself as he looked at the fit, sexy, striking man that had just came in. Oliver had no idea what he liked more about him. His tight blue ambassador t-shirt certainly highlighted how lean and extremely fit he was. Oliver really liked the man's strong jawline and short brown hair that had been styled enough to be parted to the right, so he looked even cuter. And Oliver just liked the man's smile as they both looked at each other. The cutie seemed a little nervous, and Oliver was surprised how cute he found that. He knew Gil was going to give them a briefing in a few minutes, and he really didn't want this cute man to sit somewhere else. "Did you want to sit down?" Oliver asked, just hoping beyond hope the answer would be yes. Yes to sitting down, and a yes to all the other questions Oliver so badly wanted to ask him. Mark was so damn excited as he went over to the small plastic chair next to beautiful, sexy Oliver. He was so glad that Oliver was still as hot, confident, and just as beautiful as he had been all those months ago when he had first seen him. Mark seriously liked Oliver's fit, lean body without a gram of fat on it. His longish blonde hair parted to the left was so striking and stunning that Mark just wanted to run his fingers through it, and Oliver's soft, large lips were beyond perfect. Mark really wanted to kiss him, badly. He had never really been to this particular college before, but it seemed nice enough, even if it was a little rough around the edges. But that was why he really enjoyed outreach work, because Kent University only worked with schools that had a below-average number of pupils that went on to university. This might have been a so-called rough college, as his parents would have put it, but Mark wanted to help these students realize that university, higher education, and whatever else they wanted to do with their lives was a good choice. And a choice they had, regardless of their background. Even the classroom wasn't that bad considering the state of some of the posters in the corridor. The classroom was large, clean, and he liked the layout with the rows upon rows of tables so a student and an ambassador could sit on opposite sides of it. Mark was looking forward to today. It was going to be fun. He took a seat next to Oliver and really liked the strong hints of coffee, cedarwood, and some other spice he couldn't name from Oliver's aftershave. He smelt amazing and was so beautiful that Mark didn't really care how strong the aftershave was. Mark wasn't a massive fan of how cold the chair was, but as long as he was next to Oliver, he really didn't care too much. "Everyone," Gil said as she clicked her fingers, and the other ambassadors sat down round the table with their cups of coffee, and some weird people only had tea. Mark was so having coffee in a moment. He needed it after driving through that awful road. "Today we're doing work-ready interviews, so like I said on the email, you get given these sheets, you interview the student, and at the end you give them feedback using the feedback form." "Seems simple enough," Oliver said, clearly mocking Gil. Mark smiled. "These briefings are always pointless." "No," Oliver said, "they mean we get paid an extra 15 minutes. I'm not the sort of guy to knock that, but I knock other things." Mark just grinned, and he felt his face got bright red, as he seriously hoped that meant Oliver was open to knocking up guys. "Any questions?" Gil asked. "No thanks," Mark said, and everyone else just shook their heads. A moment later, Mark took a few feedback forms and a sheet of questions from Gil as she passed them around. This definitely wasn't going to be hard work, but it should be useful to the students coming along today, and that was all that he really cared about. "Tables everyone," Gil said. Mark got up a little before Oliver could so he could subtly look at Oliver's ass as he got up. It was so worth the effort of getting up sooner. And him and Mark went over to a row of tables before realizing there was only one table left for both of them. Mark saw Gil was over by the coffee trolley, pouring herself a lukewarm cup of coffee, judging by the lack of steam. "Gil," Mark said, "you okay if me and Oliver pair up?" Gil looked at the rows. "Yeah, sure. Some people say pairing's more fun anyway." Mark smiled. That was great news, and it meant he was going to be able to spend even more time with hot, sexy Oliver, and hopefully have a chance at forming a real relationship with him. Something that might turn into friendship, and then maybe something more. He was seriously hoping it would turn into more. Mark and Oliver sat down, and he watched Oliver write their names on the top of the feedback forms. Oliver definitely had awful handwriting, but so did he, so he couldn't complain too much. "It's been ages since I've written anything," Oliver said, smiling. "Why can't they just give us laptops?" Mark laughed. "I know, right?" Mark was about to keep talking to sexy Oliver, but the fire door to the classroom opened, and a long line of college students in all their different clothes, heights, and ages poured in, and Mark realized talking to Oliver was going to have to wait. He had a job to do, and as the first person sat down, he had a feeling this was going to be really, really fun. Oliver couldn't believe how great he was at interviews compared to the guy they had just done a mock one for. He knew he should have read the briefing email closer, but no one read those emails, but these were all engineering students. He had only found out by reading the top of the feedback form, because he never would have worked that out from the student they just interviewed. He didn't seem to understand some engineering questions. He didn't know how to communicate his skills and what he could bring to a company, and it was just dire. Oliver was really pleased he could at least answer those questions in an interview. "Good, thank you for coming," Mark said, shaking the guy's hand, and then Oliver did the same. He was surprised he was jealous of the student, of getting the chance to touch Mark in a small way. Oliver wanted to shake his hand, get to know him, and just enjoy this work opportunity a little more. "How long till the next one?" Mark asked. Oliver looked around the large classroom and saw that the crowd of college students in jeans, dresses, and business suits had died down a little, and a lot of the other ambassadors were finishing up their mock interviews too. Chances were Gil would fill up those tables first and do them later. Oliver was perfectly fine with that, because it meant he got to spend some time with cute Mark. "You been doing ambassador work for long?" Oliver asked, knowing it was the easiest question to break the ice. "Since I started my physics course, so about 2 years. I'm in my 3rd year now, and I like it. It's good pay, you meet good students, and it's always a laugh," Mark said. Oliver nodded. "True. I still find it a shock when we actually have to do something." "Yeah, tell me about it. Like even today, we're getting paid for sitting, talking to each other, and having to talk to students for 20 minutes at a time. That isn't work, and it's nice. Especially when you're in good company." Oliver smiled. He really liked Mark. He was relaxed, sweet, and he just knew he was going to enjoy the next few hours for sure. "You aren't so bad yourself, I suppose?" Oliver said, grinning. "What's your favorite outreach work?" "Mythbusters for sure," Mark said, grinning. "I flat out love going into schools, talking about queer myths and misconceptions, and just telling students about life, university, and being queer." Oliver didn't even care that his face was hurting from smiling so much. That was the best, most amazing news he had heard all day, because the Mythbusters program was only for queer students, and that meant Mark was queer too. That was perfect. Oliver's stomach tightened into a painful knot as the image of his ex-boyfriend flashed across his mind. He wasn't ready to date yet. He wasn't ready to move on and possibly get hurt again. He just couldn't date someone that was somewhat similar to his ex, Toby. Toby had been an ambassador, loved the gym, and loved the Mythbuster program. He wasn't sure if Mark liked the gym, but he was close enough. Oliver just shook the silly thought away, because Mark was nice and sweet, and he shouldn't have allowed thoughts about Toby to disrupt the moment. "You okay?" Mark asked, going to put an arm on Oliver's shoulder, but he stopped himself. Oliver really wished Mark had put a hand on his shoulder. He noticed Gil next to the coffee trolley was starting to talk and direct more students towards different ambassadors. Oliver wasn't sure how much more free time him and Mark would have to talk, unfortunately. "It's okay. I was just thinking about my ex-boyfriend. He also loved the Mythbusters program too. Do you know Toby?" "Toby Longsworth." "Oh," Mark said, "I've met Toby a few times and I'm sorry, why would a guy like you date a guy like him? Oliver wasn't exactly sure how to take the question, but it was actually a rather good one. Toby wasn't that confident. He certainly wasn't sweet, but he was kind. Oliver frowned as he realized they really didn't have that much in common after all, and it was strange that it sounded like Mark wanted to say more. A lot more. Here you go, Gil said, coming over to them both with a young 17-year-old girl wearing a very formal black and white dress that made her look like a zebra. Oliver smiled because he was just hoping beyond hope she was going to be better than the last, and he could get back to talking to Mark as soon as possible. About half an hour later, Mark shook the young woman's hand firmly, and he couldn't have been happier for her. She had been a little nervous at first, but now she was calm, confident, and she had given an amazing interview. Hell, Mark really wanted to employ her because she was a hell of a worker, and she would be brilliant. As Mark stood up and stretched a little, he realized it was great moments like that that made him want to do outreach work, talk to students, and continue to help students realize all the different options they had at their fingertips if someone told them it was all possible. Mark really wanted that young woman to go far in life. "You want a coffee?" Mark asked. "Yeah, sure," Oliver said. "I'll come too." Mark wasn't really sure both of them needed to go to the little coffee trolley that was barely 10 meters from them, but it meant he would be close to stunning Oliver for a little longer. And that was hardly a problem. The two of them glided past the other ambassadors at their tables doing their interviews. Mark smiled at some of the ambassadors he had seen at other work opportunities before, and they smiled back. He really wanted to catch up with them later on. Especially Jake, who was tucked away in a corner with a very grumpy-looking student and a black business student. And as much as Jake was smiling and talking, Mark could just tell this wasn't his idea of fun. He was far tempted to go and save him, but Mark just wanted to talk to Oliver a little more about his ex-boyfriend. "Here you go," Oliver said, passing him a small coffee cup. Mark took it and made sure their fingers grazed a little. Mark was expecting Oliver to move his fingers away, but he didn't, and Oliver even rubbed their fingers together a bit. Mark flat out loved the wonderful warmth and smoothness that flowed between them so much, so Mark's wayward parts pressed against his jeans. Oliver was brilliant. Oliver poured himself a mug of coffee, but nothing was coming out, so he shook the decanter, and it was basically full. "So we were talking about Toby before," Oliver said, messing about with the lid of the decanter. "You can say whatever. It hurts, but I wouldn't mind bitching about him." Mark wasn't sure if talking to Oliver about an ex was a good idea, but he seemed okay about it. He just seems a little odd at times, and he makes rather sexist and dodgy comments and tries to pass them off as jokes. He makes me uncomfortable, to be honest, and I don't really know anyone who truly likes him. "Yeah. I definitely didn't like that about him, and you're right," Oliver said, knowing his own friends had been uncomfortable about Toby and avoided hanging out with them both. "When he made those comments, I would just tune it all out, because it wasn't right and it was disgusting." After a few more moments of watching Oliver mess around with the decanter, Mark gently took it from him and twisted the lid a little more, and the coffee came out. "Thanks," Oliver said, a little embarrassed. "Why did you break up?" "Of course, if you don't mind me asking," Mark said. "We broke up a few weeks ago," Oliver said, liking how caring Mark was, "because he didn't like me anymore, and he thought he could do better." "Rubbish," Mark said. Sorry, I mean..." "It's okay," Oliver said, taking Mark's coffee mug and filling it up for him. Mark really liked seeing Oliver's beautiful smile that reached his soft green eyes. Then Mark really focused on Oliver's beautiful, handsome face for the first time, and he realized he really was beautiful. His soft green eyes were perfectly accented by his milky white skin, his blonde hair, and his beautiful smile. Oliver was perfect. "Toby's an idiot and just an awful person," Mark said. "He never should have made those jokes, and he's just weird." Oliver stood perfectly straight and frowned a little. "But does it make me a bad person that I wanted to date him?" Mark was about to protest, but Gil came over with a 16-year-old boy in black jeans, a white untucked shirt and a massive frown on his face. This was going to be the interview from hell. Especially if Oliver believed Mark was calling him a bad person for liking Toby as much as he once did. Oliver was rather glad Mark had taken control of that particular interview because the kid really wasn't interested. He didn't have the work experience or any skills he could apply to the job role, and Oliver just couldn't understand why he was even here. He shook the kid's hand firmly and was glad when he left. He was a little annoyed at Mark for implying he was a bad person for wanting to date Toby in the first place, but he supposed he had just taken it the wrong way. "Afternoon, everyone. I hope you're hungry," the little old lady said as she brought in a large silver trolley with sandwiches, little pork pies, and other sweet things that Oliver couldn't quite see from where he was sitting. Oliver got up and weakly smiled at Mark as they all went over to the group of tables they had been sitting at earlier. It was a college, so Oliver didn't bother sitting down on the awfully cold plastic chairs. He sat on the table and was really glad when Mark sat next to him. The swarm of other ambassadors swarmed over to the trolley to grab their own paper plates, sandwiches, and whatever other goodies the college had been kind enough to give them as a thank you. "I hope there's something left for you," Mark said, smiling. Oliver nodded. "I doubt it." They both laughed, and Oliver just looked at Mark and smiled. The sweet aromas of vanilla, puff pastries, and chocolate chip cookies filled the classroom as Oliver noticed someone take off some cling film off a foil tray. It might have been a good few years since he had come here, but Oliver couldn't deny his college wasn't bad at cooking. It had a hell of a lot of problems, but cooking, thankfully, wasn't one of them. "I don't think you're a bad person, you know," Mark said. Oliver smiled. He really had been too quick to judge that comment, and Mark was right about everything really. Toby wasn't the best guy, and there were times when he didn't even treat Oliver very well. His parents, his family, and a few random people in Toby's lectures had said the same. He had ignored it all in the name of love. "No, honestly, it's okay," Oliver said. I just think I've been hurting at times because the breakup and you made me realize why I've been hurting so much." Oliver liked how Mark subtly moved a little closer. He really liked the subtle scent of Mark's flowery aftershave that mixed perfectly with the hints of chocolate in the air. Oliver was never going to get tired of Mark's smell. "Why?" Mark asked. Oliver took a deep breath. "Because he was a dick to me and other people. I feel bad, okay? I feel bad that I was so blinded by having a boyfriend I didn't challenge him when he was sexist and everything else he did." "Okay," Mark said, nodding. "It doesn't make you a bad person. It means you were in love, and that's all in the past. It's what you do going forward that matters." Oliver cocked his head and was glad the swarm of other ambassadors were starting to move away from the trolley. He wanted his lunch. "What do you mean?" Oliver asked. Mark gestured to the classroom. "As student ambassadors, we see hundreds of students each year because being general here and saying stuff I shouldn't say. Because of their backgrounds, each of these students have been told they shouldn't go to university." Oliver nodded. He had definitely been told that by his teachers, his parents, and wider family. "And," Mark said, "each of these students believed it, and they never thought university was an option. Until we come in, we talk to them and show them if they want to go to university, then it's an option. And all that negativity and doubt can remain in the past because these students have the power to do whatever they want in the future." Oliver nodded. He understood the point. It was a weird way to put it, but Oliver really appreciated it, how Mark was saying it didn't matter what Oliver did or didn't do in the past about challenging Toby. It was what he wanted to do now and in the future. "I'll challenge sexism more in the future, I promise," Oliver said. "Good," Mark said, getting up, "because I want some lunch." Oliver was about to get up too, but he didn't. Instead, he just watched hot, sexy, beautiful Mark artfully glide towards the trolley. Then he picked up a paper plate and started talking, laughing and smiling with the other ambassadors. And Oliver realized that Mark really was special and beautiful. He could talk to anyone. He was confident, and there was just something so sweet and cute about him that Oliver really wanted to explore a relationship after today. They still had another 3 hours left of the interviews to do, and Oliver fully intended to use those 3 hours as much as he could. And then he was going to ask out Mark on a real date, and he so badly wanted him to say yes. Thankfully, Oliver seriously doubted Mark would say no, and he sort of had a little feeling that one date would turn into a second, then third, and then on forever. His stomach filled with butterflies at the very idea, and that idea of a possible future made him a lot more excited than he had any right to feel. 3 hours later, Mark, Oliver, and all the other student ambassadors went out of the massive glass doors out of the college's reception area and into the car park. It was a little before the college students were released, and the massive car parks with rows upon rows of cars were empty of people. Mark rather liked the look of the white, black, and gray cars. He recognized some of the brands of Fiat, Citroën, and Ford, but that was about it. He was still useless at cars, and he so wasn't looking forward to driving down that narrow road again. That was going to be hell. Bye, everyone. Nice seeing you all. Thanks for your hard work today, Gil said. Mark waved at her, and the large group of student ambassadors that were getting lifts with her back to the university campus, over 30 minutes drive away. Mark smiled, as that left just him and stunning Oliver alone in the car park together. He really liked Oliver's strong aftershave, with the wonderful hints of coffee, cedarwood, and that odd spice he couldn't name filled the space between them. The sun was high and rather warm, and there wasn't a cloud in the sky. Mark had no idea what he was waiting for, but he was going to ask out Oliver for sure, because the past few hours had been great. They had talked, laughed, and really bonded over outreach work and everything else they had in common. Mark had no idea Oliver didn't like the same outreach staff members as he did, but he wasn't surprised. No one liked Nikki, Claire, or Hunter. They were nightmares to be harsh to nightmares. Mark smiled as he took a step closer to Oliver, and his breath caught in his throat. The sound of passing cars on the main road, the rustling of leaves, and the distant talking of college students made Mark a little nervous, but his smile only grew. "You know I'm going to say yes, right?" Oliver asked, grinning like a little schoolboy. Mark laughed. "What was my question then, smartass?" "Well," Oliver said, closing the gap between them, "you were going to ask me if you wanted to go for dinner, talk, and see if something could happen between us." Mark blushed, and he had no idea why he felt so hot and slightly excited by Oliver. He looked stunning, he smelt great, and Mark so badly wanted to spend some more time with him. He actually doubted he wanted to be apart from him. "Am I wrong?" Oliver asked. Mark's grin grew even more, and he just focused on Oliver's handsome, beautiful face with his longish blonde hair parted to the left and insanely fit body. He was the definition of beauty. "No," Mark said, "I know a little queer cafe near here. The owner likes me, and we could get a window seat." Mark didn't exactly have the heart to tell Oliver the so-called window seat meant they would be looking out onto bins at the back of the cafe and surrounding restaurants. But it sounded romantic. "If you're talking about pink Frankies, then I'll skip the window seat, but a date would be nice." Mark rolled his eyes at his failed romantic gesture, but he held his hand, and Oliver took it without a second thought. Mark flat out loved the warmth, smoothness, and chemistry that flowed between them. And as Mark led stunning Oliver to his car, and they drove away, Mark was so excited for the future because he just had a feeling this definitely wouldn't be their only date, and there would be many more to come. And they had only met because they both loved helping students realize they could go to university, achieve whatever they wanted in life, and that was a really wonderful feeling to have.
Welcome back, everyone. It's me again, Connor Whiteley. So I really hope that you enjoyed today's story, because I flat out love writing, creating stories, and sharing them with you. If you really enjoyed today's story, then please remember to like, comment, and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss any new content. And the engagement really helps the Whiteleyverse with the YouTube algorithms. And if you want to buy this short story or any of my other fiction, then they're available from all major ebook retailers, and you can get them from your local library if you requested. And you can order the paperback copies from Amazon, your local bookstore, or local library if you request it. Lastly, if you want to support the channel on a one-off basis, then you can now buy me a coffee at buymeacoffee.com/Connor Whiteley. Also, if you know anyone who would enjoy today's story, then please share it with them. I'm always really grateful when you wonderful people help spread the word about the channel. So, thanks for watching the Whiteley Verse, and I'll see you again soon. Have a great day, everyone.